Good morning. We're on week 2 of the new quarter. We've got our lessons this quarter are coming out of the book of Numbers. So last week we looked at Numbers chapter 11, the first half of it. This week we're going to look at the second half of Numbers chapter 11. The end of last week's lesson, we looked at a conversation between Moses and God. And we saw a conversation that kind of wasn't your typical conversation that you have with God. I want to flip back over and read the last part of that as we go into today's lesson. So Numbers chapter 11, verses 10 through 15. Then Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, everyone at the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was greatly aroused. Moses was also displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you afflicted your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight, that you have laid all the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I beget them, that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom, as a guardian carries a nursing child, to the land which you swore to their fathers? Where am I going to get meat to give all these people? For they weep all over me, saying, give us meat that we may eat. I am not able to bear these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. If you treat me like this, please kill me here and now, if I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my wretchedness." So at the end of the class last week, we looked at Moses' conversation here with God. And Moses basically lays it all out there to God. He basically tells God, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be the leader of these people. This is something that you gave me. The burden is just too great to bear. It's just something that I can't do. So what was the purpose of our lesson last week? What was kind of the main point that we talked about? About the people of Israel. Complaining, right? They were complainers. So we looked at the complainers. Moses had 600,000 of them. And if you can imagine, 600,000. And Moses is taking care of these people, the people of Israel, as if they were his children. I can't imagine being responsible for 600,000 complainers. And just having 3 kids alone is exhausting. I would have to say taking care of 600,000 would be very stressful, to say the least. So last week we saw Moses really at his wit's end. He kind of let everything bottle up and let it all out there to God and just say, God, I can't take it anymore. Something's got to give. If you have to take my life, but I just can't do this. And so this week we're going to look at God's response to Moses. We're going to look at the second half of the chapter and see what God says to Moses in response to his cry out to God. So we'll start out in verses 16 and 17. So the Lord said to Moses, "Gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them. Bring them to the tabernacle of meeting, that they may stand there with you. Then I will come down and talk with you there. I will take of the Spirit that is upon you and will put the same upon them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself alone." So the first thing that God replies to is Moses' stress, or Moses' concern. It looks like to me that this was a bigger concern to God than the people of Israel crying out and asking for meat. So God addresses first Moses' concern because it's actually more valid. So God's entrusted Moses to be his messenger for many years. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. He delivered God's commands to Israel and Israel's complaints to God for quite some time. So he's been in this mediator role, this messenger role for a long time. So I'm in IT, so computer engineering, we would call Moses a single point of failure. So a single point of failure is a part of a system that if it fails, the whole system stops working. So we see that a lot in technology. You've got a single point of failure, so you've got backups and things like that. So Moses was a single point of failure. Moses took a vacation. Moses took a break, decided to take a day off from babysitting the people of Israel. Then people are going to go into panic and chaos. And we've actually seen this before. So before Numbers 11, where we're at right now, If you look at Exodus chapter 32, this has already happened, where Moses went away for a little while. Does anybody remember what happened in Exodus 32? When Moses went up to Mount Sinai. So he went up to Mount Sinai and received the Ten Commandments and several other laws. What happens to the people down that didn't go up to Mount Sinai with him? What are they doing? They're making a golden calf, right? So Moses is gone for a little while, no more than 40 days, and they convinced Aaron, Moses' brother, which to me is the most amazing part, they convinced Aaron to help them make an idol out of gold. So how long was Moses up on Mount Sinai? 40 days, yeah? So he was up there 40 days, and God said, people are down there, they're worshiping idols, you need to get back down there. So Moses comes back down. So in less than a month and a half, these people are missing Moses, who is their single point of failure. And without Moses, all 600,000 of them, there's nobody that stands up and takes a leadership position to say no. The God of the Bible is the one that led us out of Egypt. The God of the Bible is the one that delivered us here, that got us to where we're at. It rains down manna from heaven, every night. The God of the Bible is who we need to be worshiping, not this golden calf. Even the Egyptians, and probably several others in the world, still feared the God of the Bible at this time, if I had to guess. After the 10 plagues and the destroying of the Egyptian army in the Red Sea. We talked a little bit last week about how God could have delivered the Israelites without the 10 plagues. If the 10 plagues weren't necessary, it wasn't something that God had to be done. He could have delivered the Israelites just however he wanted to, right? But God chose to use the 10 plagues, and he chose to use the Red Sea, the parting of the Red Sea, and then coming back over the Egyptian army as a sign to both the Israelites, the Egyptians, and the rest of the world that the God of the Bible is the one true God. The God of the Bible is more powerful than any of the other gods that the people at the time were serving. So before going up to the mountain in Exodus chapter 19, verses 17 through 20, we read from the Bible, "Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up." So before Moses went up the mountain, he brought the people of Israel to the foot of the mountain. God made his power known to them right before Moses goes up. God reveals himself, he sends fire down, there's smoke. God shows himself to the people of Israel. And somehow, in less than 40 days, they already turned their back on him. So we see, Moses is this single point of failure. Without Moses, the people of Israel are going to turn their backs on God just in a heartbeat, in an instant. They're just going to turn away from God without Moses there to help them. So what a burden to carry. That's the burden that Moses had on him. It's the burden that he carried with him every day. So God evidently thought Moses' complaint, Moses' concern, as we read about last week, was a valid, justified concern. He was justified to feel stressed out. He was justified to feel like he was overburdened, because he was. So I think that's why God's first response is to Moses, and it's not to the Israelites. Because Moses had a valid concern. Moses had a valid reason to be stressed out and overburdened. So what does it say that God does for Moses? God offers help, right? And God tells Moses to what? Gather 70.
They will judge the people, or at least less difficult.
The 70 people will, at this point, actually, as you were talking about earlier, at this point, God says the 70 elders will prophesy. So God took the Holy Spirit, took the Spirit that was in Moses, and took some of it and put it on these 70 elders. So the book, to Butch's point, the book talks about this not being the first time that Moses has had to have some relief, has had to have some help from his burden as his single point of failure, if you will, for the entire Israelites. Prior to this occasion, what else did he delegate to other men? which just hit it right on the head. Judgment, right? So prior to this, who was it that told him? Who was it that came to Moses and said, "You're doing too much"? Who? No. Jethro, yeah. So Jethro, his father-in-law, Moses' father-in-law, comes to Moses and tells him that what he's doing isn't good. He comes to visit Moses. He sees that Moses is judging pretty much every case that anybody brings up throughout this whole country of 600,000 people. And everything comes to Moses. So his father-in-law says, it's not good for you, it's not good for your health, it's not good for your well-being. You know, being the sole judge of Israel is just too great of a burden. So Jethro is the one, his father-in-law is the one that suggests that he appoint other men. He suggests to train up these capable men to be judges over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, is what it says. And then only the difficult cases after that needed to be heard would then come through up to Moses, and Moses would judge those. So does Moses listen to Jethro? Yes, it's always wise to listen to your wife's father. So Moses appointed judges. He appointed judges throughout Israel, and these men helped Moses judge some of the smaller cases. And so this actually did take a big burden off of Moses. So why did Moses think to do this before? In both cases, why did Moses not think, well, hey, why don't I get people to help him? We don't know, right? I think he felt like he could do it all, probably. I don't know that he didn't trust other people. I don't think that was the case because he did finally appoint judges. Mark?
Well, I mean, God called Moses. Moses tried to get out of it. God said, no, you're the guy. You're the man. So maybe he just felt, hey, this is what God's giving me to do. So maybe that's why he didn't try to delegate.
Yeah, maybe he didn't understand that he could, right? He didn't know that he could.
Cory,
Yes.
going back to Exodus, was Aaron held responsible for what he did when Moses was up on the mountain?
John?
Do what?
Was Moses held responsible? Was Aaron held responsible for what he did when Moses was on the mountain?
God was displeased, very displeased with it.
Right. God was displeased with it. I don't know that we see a direct punishment because of that, though. I don't recall when John or Brother Olson, there a direct punishment. I don't know. Right.
Aaron had taken part in it, done it at the request of the people, and that was a displeasure of God. I don't know what all of the count.
Right.
And was there like 23,000 Israelites killed at that time?
I think it was 3,000. Yeah. I think so, yeah.
They weren't allowed to touch that mountain while God was up there, even one of their animals was to be put to death if it went on that mountain while Moses was up there.
Right.
The law of God put down that would be carried out if they did this.
Right. Yep, true. So Moses doesn't think to delegate. Moses doesn't think about delegating these responsibilities to people. And I think that's an aspect for me personally that I can relate to Moses with. I have a hard time saying no to people. Before I got married, I did a lot of computer work. I had a lot of people ask me to help them with their computers. And after I got married and started having kids, I had to start saying no. But it's so hard to tell people no. I don't have time to do that. But there are just so many people that ask. You just have so much time, right? So unfortunately, there's only 24 hours in a day, right? There's 24 hours in my day, there's 24 hours in your day. Even though Moses was a prophet of God, he still only had 24 hours a day in his life. So Moses also had a family, he had a wife, he had children, so he had kids to raise, discipline. He had other things to do as well. And so Moses had other things. But at the same time, God placed him in this leadership position. So Moses had a hard time prioritizing the work of God with time with family and other things like that. And it stretched him out. It put a big burden on him. So God put him in this position of leadership, really the way I look at it is less of like a king type thing and more of like a father type relationship to the Israelites. He's not a king that decrees what they do, but he's more of a father figure they look up to. He leads them. Without him, they go off into chaos.
Moses and Paul had a lot in common. God had a plan that he was using. He was going to use them in and did use both of them.
Right. Yep. So the people depended on Moses. Moses kept them close to God. Moses kept the blessings of God coming on them. Without Moses, they were off doing their own thing and they didn't get the blessings of God to their own fault. So throughout his entire life, I think we see in other instances as well, Moses had this problem of delegating things to other people. But I think that was on Moses, that wasn't on God. I don't think that's something that God told Moses, you can't do that. We see in both occasions, when Moses asked for help, does God approve of the help that he needs? Yes, God doesn't have a problem with it at all, right? God, in the first case, the father-in-law is the one that suggested it. In the second case, God's the one that says, yeah, go get 70 men. You're doing the work of what I consider to be the work of 70 men. And that's basically what God tells me. So God had no problem with him getting help. So from this first part, first two verses here, kind of two lessons that we can get from this. The first one, God expects us to prioritize things in a certain order. But just because God comes first doesn't mean that everything else just completely goes out of our life. Part of being the leader is getting the appropriate help from others when it's needed. And so that's something I think we can learn from Moses in this story. And God doesn't expect other people to just sit around and do nothing while certain people spend 12, 14 hours of their day doing the work of God. That work can be distributed. He doesn't expect people to neglect other parts of their life. He doesn't expect you to neglect your family. He just expects to be put first in your life. Any comments on that one? Any thoughts on that one?
Moses went back and spent 44 days. He spent 80 days on the mountain. He also spent 80 years in the wilderness.
Right.
He was there 40 years before he brought the children out. He kept them in the wilderness for 38 years, which was 40 years.
Right. Yeah. Anything else on that one? For the second lesson, I think we see here is don't hesitate to ask God for help. I don't think Moses intentionally kept this burden on himself because he wanted to be the hero. I don't think he was looking to be the hero. To Mark's point, I think he just didn't have good clarity on what his role was. He thought that this burden was supposed to be all his and he couldn't share it with anybody else. I think he simply didn't feel like he should ask God for help. He didn't feel like he could tell God he was stressed out or overburdened. So he let it all kind of bottle up until it finally just busted out in this big frustration that we read in Numbers 11, 10 through 15, where he tells God, I'd rather be dead than carry this burden. So he just lets it bottle up. I think we can relate to that today. I think there are several things in our life that are just small things that we think are insignificant. So what is it in your life? What struggles are you facing that you're not asking God's help with? Because you feel that it's so insignificant that maybe you shouldn't take it before God. Don't let those things bottle up like Moses did. Don't let those things fester in you and become a bigger deal than they are. Take that to God. That's, I think, the lesson that we can learn from Moses here. Any other comments on that one before we move on? So after God addresses Moses' frustration, then he addresses the need of the people, this need that they have to eat meat. So we saw last week in the verses that we read, that the people were very dramatic about not having meat to eat. At least that's the way I interpret it. And they were very dramatic. They were wailing outside their tent, wailing outside Moses' tent. Oh, we have no meat. When we were in Egypt, we had all these good things to eat, and we have none of that now. All we have is this manna. And so they were really almost whining about it. They were complaining. It was very dramatic. If I picture it in my mind, that's how I picture it. It's just a very dramatic thing. So we read that this angered God, and it also displeased Moses, was what the verse said. So now let's look at God's response to the Israelites in verses 18 through 25. Then you shall say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, Who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us with Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, not 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. Because you have despised the Lord that is among you, and have wept before him, saying, Why did we ever come up out of Egypt? And Moses said, The people whom I am among are 600,000 men on foot. Yet you have said, I will give them meat, that they may eat for a whole month. Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them, to provide enough for them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them, to provide enough for them? And the Lord said to Moses, Has the Lord's arm been shortened? Now you shall see whether what I say will happen to you or not. So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered the 70 men of the elders and of the people, and placed them around the tabernacle. And then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and placed the same upon 70 elders. And it happened, when the Spirit rested upon them, that they prophesied, although they never did so again. So we see in this passage that God does actually grant the request of the Israelites for meat, but it's really more begrudgingly than it is because he wants to, right? He doesn't give in because they deserve it, that's for sure. God gives in because really probably he's tired of hearing it, right? So I know there's several parents out here. As parents, do we ever give in to something just because we're tired of listening to it? Lindsay and I do it every day. You pick your battles, right? So I think that's part of it, the reason God gives in. But I also wonder if there was an underlying concern, kind of like we talked about before. If God didn't grant this request, if people didn't get meat to eat, they might turn away from him again. And so he grants the request. I think possibly he grants the request so that they don't turn away from him and they don't get in the situation that they've already been in. Because the people were so quick to turn on him. So I think we see time and time again with the Israelites that God continually provides these miracles for them. He continues to show them his power and his wonder time and time again, because if he doesn't, they turn away from him. So God ends up telling them basically, I'll give you meat to eat. I'll give you more than you can ever eat. You'll eat so much that you'll get sick of it, which is probably the whole reason that they didn't get it every day to begin with, right? So God would on occasion send quail. So this wasn't something that they'd never had quail before, right? They get manna every day, but on occasion they would get meat, they would get quail. But they wanted to be spoiled. They wanted to get what they wanted when they wanted it. They wanted meat every day, whenever they wanted to eat it. So instead of this random treat, they wanted it to be a staple food in their diet. So for me, the takeaway of this lesson is pretty obvious. Be careful what you ask for, right? So we see what happens to them. I don't even know if that's in this part. Maybe that's next week. No. So what ends up happening is he sends a plague on them, right? They get all the meat that they can eat. God sends a plague, and a lot of them get sick. So the moral of the story is be careful what you ask for. When we pray, things that we pray about, we need to be praying, seeking God's will, not asking God to do what we want. We need to be asking God to provide the solutions and not asking him to make our solutions, be the solution, right? So we need to ask God for his input. What does the Lord's Prayer say? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, right? In the model prayer, Jesus even says, thy will be done. So it's not asking about, oh, I want this one thing, give me this one thing. Which is, it's okay to ask for things. It's not that we can't ask for things, right? But we have to know that if it's within God's will, he'll grant it. And if not, we need to be okay with that. So the last point I want to address briefly before we close is one that I actually disagree with the author of the book on, so I want your input on this. When God says he'll provide meat for the Israelites for a solid month, what is Moses' response?
How are you going to do it?
Yeah, basically, he said, how? And how are you going to do that? There's so many of us. verses 21 and 22, I'll read it again. Moses said, people whom I am among are 600,000 men, yet you have said, I will give them meat that they may eat for a whole month. Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them, to provide enough for them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered for them, to provide enough for them? So the author of the book kind of thinks Moses is doubting God. And I personally don't see it that way. I don't interpret this as unbelief on Moses' part. I interpret this as a conversation between Moses and God, who have this relationship, who have conversations, where Moses is really just saying, how are you going to do that? You know, he just doesn't comprehend for 600,000 men how God's going to provide meat. It's not that he doesn't think that he can. He's just wondering for 30 days in a row that everybody to have meat every single day. And I think that says men, right? 600,000 men on foot, which doesn't include women and children. So how are you going to provide meat for all these people? Will all the fish in the ocean even do that? I think he's simply asking a question. I want your thoughts on that. Do you think Moses is kind of doubting God, or do you think he's just saying, what in the world? How do you do that?
I think he was offering to help because he suggested, all the birds in the sea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When Christ was teaching and the apostles, you know, he told them to sit down and let's feed the people, and they wanted to go someplace else to get food. And he's, you know, we know what happened with him. They had all they wanted and picked up many, many baskets more. If I'm not mistaken, Christ got on to them a little bit and saw it as a lack of faith on their part. So I see it very parallel with Moses. Maybe he didn't mean it that way, but just like the apostles, that's how it's taken.
That was what I thought about as well. I don't know, I just thought Moses, the way Moses responded was a little different to me than how the disciples responded. Because I think theirs was more disbelief.
I wondered that if he was thinking, okay, you gave me some relief on this touching, now how am I going to handle this thing that you're going to back and give?
What are the logistics of it, right? What do I need to do? Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I don't know why Allie couldn't speak to me, he was in our manager every day, so why did he, that day he could send me?
That's a good point. But you said he'd send a man every day, why would he doubt that he could send meat? And he'd also sent the 12 before as well, right? It wasn't the first time they had meat. He was just wondering how is that going to continue to come for 30 days in a row? Anybody else have any comments at all on the whole lesson before we close? Mark?
That question was asked about, did Aaron, was he rebuked or anything for the golden calf? When Moses did come down, he did ask him, hey, why did this happen? I mean, Moses did get onto him, and Aaron just came back with, you know how evil these people are. But the result of that happening was 3,000 men got killed. So maybe obviously Aaron didn't get held probably to the level of accountability that he should have, because he was basically left in charge. But 3,000 men's death was a result of that happening.
All right. Anybody else? Brother Austin, you care to close the word of prayer?
Moses' life was divided into three parts, three 40s. 40 years he, to his father Jethro, and took care of his sheep for 40 years, and then he went and brought him out of the wilderness, lived to be 120, if I'm not, is that right, John?
40-year increments. Would you care to close us in the word of prayer, Brother Austin?
Our most gracious and kind, loving Heavenly Father, we thank thee for this day and for this privilege we have to assemble and study thy word. Help us,